Late night store clerks. What is the strangest things that's happened on the job? A guy came in to buy beer after hours. Told him I couldn't sell. It was against the law. He pulled out a badge. Said I am the law. I called 911 and a cop shows up. Tells me if I can just let it go. I wouldn't have any more problems. I let it go. 2 weeks later. Driving home late at night. Way over the speed limit, I got pulled over. It was cop number 2. He came up to the car. Recognized me. Said slow down and left. A man came in 10 times within a single hour. He kept leaving and coming back without buying a single thing. Finally, on the 10th time he comes up to the counter with a box of tampons. I proceeded to ask him, "Rough night?" To which he responded, "I really don't want to talk about it." Had a guy pull up to the pump. Unhooked it wanting post pay. Our policy said not to authorize it between midnight and 5 AM. Prepay only. I announced this to the dude over the loudspeaker. I'm pretty sure he was wasted. He continued to get more and more belligerent. When he started beating the pumps with the nozzle hose. I called the cops. Dude starts banging on the door. Locked. No way he would get in. Can't. Gets frustrated. And finally just whips his deal out and starts wagging it in the general direction of the store. The CCTV is getting all this. So I just start laughing my ass off. Then the cops pull up. And 2 deputies put this poor, drunk, deal wagging man away in the back of a police car. I quit a few months after that. I hope I'm not too late to the party here. I used to work the graveyard at a gas station near my place. Pretty normal night. Clean. Stock smokes. Clean again. Sit behind the counter. A woman came in about mid-30s with a little boy with her. She was in tears and her clothes were torn a bit. She came up and asked to use the phone. When she got off without getting an answer, she asked to stay here for a bit. I told her it would be no problem. About 20 minutes goes by and I wound up giving her and her kid free drinks and one of the sandwiches we have on the hot rack. She was in the store for about 30 minutes until her boyfriend came in and found her and her kid. He was pretty calm at first but then started screaming at her and telling her she needs to come with him. Luckily before anything crazy happened, a cruiser pulls up to the front and 2 cops come in and intervened. He was arrested right there. I guess he had been beating her in front of her kid and she was trying to run away. I'm glad I got to keep her away from harm for at least a little bit. Was a scary night. Edit. Thank you for the gold. I wish I knew what came up those 2. But I can only hope that asshole was put away and they were never bothered again. Colon. Let's see. Closed the store to play hockey on the roof. Had a guy come in and inspect individual eggs in each carton until he found the perfect egg. Had an old guy who asked to use our bathroom but first he needed reading material and asked for a porn mag from behind the counter. But when we gave it to him he said he didn't like that one and asked for a different one. Then he died while sheeting. You know, normal sheet like that. Aside from the sheet covered walls and vomit that you'd expect from a typical gas station, I could say this was the most peculiar. I had a man come in and buy a novelty lighter and some lighter fluid. No biggie. Sometime the next week, police came in and asked for our camera footage the night I sold the lighter and stuff. The guy apparently used that lighter and fluid to kill his 3-month-old baby. Duck people man. 11:30 PM in Auxerre and on break working till 4 AM in a sort of restaurant fast food store. Last week I saw a woman order 4 burgers but wanted no ingredients other than lettuce. Not even any bread. I offered if she would like to just buy the lettuce as a topping and just pay $1.25 for it, but she insisted on ordering 4 servings of burger lettuce at full burger price. I never understood this mentality. A buddy of mine worked at a Burger King and had this woman who would come and order a burger plus his toppings. When he informed her that what she wanted was a Whopper and that ordering one would save her about $2.50, she flipped her sheet and insisted on paying more. So he went back and gave her a Whopper anyways. I work nights at a gas station in a pretty good neighborhood in New Hampshire. So usually it's pretty boring. One night I did have a customer really creep me out. I was just getting ready to close down the store when a little old man came in. He was small and dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt. I made the usual small talk of asking him how his day was going. Then as I was handing him his change, he firmly grabbed my wrist, made direct eye contact with me and said, "Hell is a real place and the devil has already got his hand on you, girl. Be careful." I was just talking to a friend about stuff like this maybe a week ago. For reference, he works 10 PM to 6 AM at a gas station in a really rough neighborhood. Here are some of the things he has told me about. A woman came into the store at 3 AM screaming about her boyfriend being an asshole and refused to leave. Heroin sales literally every night. They found footprints on the toilet seat and a bag of meth in the ceiling tiles. A man came in to use the bathroom at midnight. He was still in there half an hour later, and so my friend knocked. He didn't respond. Paramedics were called when he was found to be near death from a heroin overdose. Cops come in on a regular basis looking for people. Drunk people making threats of violence if they don't get more beer. He probably told me more things, but I can't remember all of them right now. He makes minimum wage doing this. You couldn't make me do that job even at gunpoint, which would probably happen in that town. Edit, this is in Barry, Vermont. Stop asking me. I work at this shitty local fast food joint, which I won't name. Anyways, one night me and one other guy have to run the whole damn place because the manager can't be bothered to do his job. I don't get scared easily, but it gets spooky when it gets late. Like, I'm running to the dumpster and back. Then this asshole that I work with starts making up this bullshit story about some serial killer, which ordinarily wouldn't bother me. But it's late. Then shit goes from bad to worse. The lights on the inside reflecting off the glass doesn't let us see out very far, but we can hear a guy kinda scraping, if that word makes sense, at the door. I turn and make eye contact and his eyes are ducking dinner plates. He kinda squeaks out a sentence. All I made out sounded something like the hash-slinging slasher. I worked at a 24/7 gas station in a small college town. One night, the club across the street had a fight break out and about 50 people were pepper sprayed by the police when they responded at about 1:30 AM. 5 minutes later, 50 angry club goers busting into the store, running to the dairy cooler, dousing themselves in milk and then running back out. I just stood there in utter confusion and then told my boss I didn't want the late shift anymore. Edit, man. I really missed out on an amusing pun with utter confusion. Huh. Story time. In high school I worked at a little mom and pop department store. We sold odds and ends at super high prices and they eventually went out of business when I was a couple years into college. Anyway, one night I was working a closing shift and that involves shutting down the registers, turning off all the lights, etc. We had just stocked these baby doll toys on the shelf that day. Those motion sensing ones that giggled and cooed when you got close to them. Well, the lights turning off must have triggered them because after the first chunk goes out we hear coos. Second chunk goes out, giggles. Third chunk goes out and we hear Islam is the light. Needless to say we shipped those suckers back to the manufacturer. They didn't know about the propaganda babies because they only said that phrase randomly, so it must have gotten past whatever testing process they had. Very freaky to hear in a dark store at night. I watched a truck pull up to one of our pumps. Guy gets out to pump gas. A Durango comes hauling us from the back of the building. Another guy gets out with a gun aimed at the first guy. I was on the phone with a friend of mine and said, "Someone just pulled a gun at the pump. I'm going to have to let you go." I called the cops. Turned out the guy pumping gas had robbed a store 3 towns over and the Durango was an undercover cop who had been in pursuit. Another time, a guy came in, walked to the back cooler, got a can of Sprite and came to the register to check out. As I'm ringing him up, one of our local cops walks in, gun drawn, says, "Put your hands on the counter. Put your hands on the counter. Now." Well, I put my hands on the counter along with the customer because all I'm thinking is, I have no idea what I've done, but I'm very sorry for it. Turned out that guy had been involved with a robbery of a convenience store in the next town, 5 minutes away, had fled in a Mustang with 2 other individuals. They wrecked the car trying to evade the cops. All 3 dispersed. 2 were apprehended pretty quickly, but the 3rd came into the store to either blend in or rob me. I honestly don't know which. After the festivities and them hauling the guy away, the cop told me he had almost lost it when I put my hands on the counter too, and that I should really rethink working closing shifts at my age. I was 19 at the time and I am female. I laughed and was like, and give up free entertainment. Edit. First story to clarify. The undercover cop jumped out of the Durango with a gun pointed at the suspect. I worked 11 p.m. 7 a.m. shift in an all-night garage for a few months when I was 18. There was this weird Vietnamese dude who drove a white Honda Prelude and always filled up with £6 and 66 pence of petrol. He wore the same pair of cutoffs every time, with blotches and bruises all over his legs, and used to literally wander in, leaning against the displays, pick up as many yogurts as he could carry, pay with a £50 note and stagger out. One time he came in with these 2, obviously prostitute, women who word raped all over him with the biggest pupils I have ever seen. They stood at the counter while I scanned all their yogurts, and he spoke for the first and only time. Staring at me, said to the women she can join us. Can't she? One of the women looked at me and said, you'll make a lot more money if you come with us, darling. I nervously laughed, took their cash and they left, grinning in silence. Beat up kid comes to us at 3 a.m. Blood everywhere. Doesn't want us to call an ambulance. Our policy says if they don't want us to, we can't. So he was just chilling there, bleeding. When we said we were going to call the cops to help, he bolted. My bet was he had a warrant out for his arrest, so that's why he didn't want any medical police attention. Edit. Store policy clarification. That policy is meant for like if a customer stubs their toe and either demands or declines an ambulance. If this kid is an adult and decides he doesn't want the medics called, in corporate sci, they honor him. But had he been dying, obviously we would call. Edit numero 2. Only because my inbox is on hotter than my fam's mixtapes. We don't know this guy. If he has a warrant out for his arrest for a felony and we call an ambulance to pick him up, he would probably get violent with us, punching us away, because he knows they come. He goes to jail. I work 3rd shift at a Sheetz. For those of you who don't know, it's a gas station, convenience store, fast food place. On multiple occasions I have been cussed out because we discontinued pickled chips. I've had people tell me to duck off, break things, demand to call corporate, etc. Drunk people love pickled chips. Edit. I get it. Sober people love pickled chips too. The place I worked had a monitor camera that showed you on it as you walked it. It was like 10 minutes before closing and a guy walks in and just starts rapping into the camera and acting like he's shooting a music video. He went through an entire song. I work at a deli and about a half hour from close a woman comes to the counter and just says lambone. We had it, so I go to the back freezer, come back to the counter and her daughter is there. She tells me to cancel the order. Meanwhile her mom is right beside her repeating lambone over and over again. She had dementia and I didn't even notice. In high school I worked at a 24 pharmacy which also had a small selection of beer. At about 2 a.m. this guy walks in 3 sheets to the wind, saunters over to the beer and grabs 12 packs. He comes up to the counter and slams the beer down, reaches into his pocket and pulls out a half-eaten taco and puts it on the counter. I couldn't say anything because I was so perplexed. I just let him walk out with the beer and told my bosses I thought he might have a gum also. Was the strangest thing I've ever seen. A couple weeks later he apparently tried this at the family-owned gas station across the street and got shot. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. Every Tuesday night at about 8:45 a guy would come in. A guy in Daisy Dukes and a sequined bikini top. He was balding. Had a beer gut and chest hair. He would strut his stuff to the counter and order 2 sprinkle donuts. Every Tuesday. I was working the graveyard shift at a big grocery store doing the self-checkout registers. I was the only person around the store other than the stock crew and maybe 2 or 3 customers. I got a call from the fuel center and the attendant was freaking out and told me someone was flipping over the Coke machines. WTF, right? And she was calling the police. I assumed the guy would just leave after that, so I held tight and waited for the police. Until this young blonde guy walks in and calmly walked past me. I tailed him for a few aisles and once he turned a corner on the baby aisle he took off running and grabbed a big display of Dr. Seuss books and flung it to the ground. He ended up getting arrested at the entrance by a few cops and I got asked question after question. All in all, a fun night. I'm not a store clerk, but I went into a Family Express gas station. If you are from Indiana you know, around midnight and I needed condoms. For 6. I'm not shy at all about buying this stuff. I practice safe sex, duck me right? I have no reason to be embarrassed. I asked the clerk where the condoms are and he replies, we don't carry those. We are a fundamentally Christian company and don't support premarital intercourse. I asked him how he knew if I was married or not. He replied, then you shouldn't be using condoms because it's against God's will to prevent pregnancies using man-made means. At that point he could probably sense that I was about to fly off on him. So he said, nah. I'm just ducking with you pal, they are over by the ramen noodles. I wasn't even mad. That man was a master troll.